Hey guys, this video might turn out a little bit odd. It's past midnight, I'm quite tired and a bit upset. I don't have any script and I might even publish this whole thing without editing. So you will just have to excuse me if I stutter a little bit. This evening I visited one of my clients. As we always do, we talked for a while and then watched a movie. It's just that this movie was the most upsetting movie I've seen since Never Let Me Go, which says quite a bit. After the movie, we said goodnight and I went home, but I actually started crying on the way home. I have to stop my bicycle and sit down for a while so I wouldn't endanger myself and others in the traffic. As far as I can remember, in my lifetime, there's only 3 movies that got me to cry. The first one was the 3rd movie in the Lord of the Rings series. I think it was called The Return of the King. I don't care very much about the movie itself. It was just this war scene in the middle, where the noble humans were fighting against those disgusting orcs. And the narrative was so very clear. Those orcs, they are so disgusting, they are not human at all, they completely deserve to die. In fact, slaughtering all orcs in the world would be a wonderful thing, it would be a good deed, because this is an evil race. And my problem wasn't with this narrative in itself. Sure, it is a narrative that I despise, but hey, it's just a movie, it's just a story. I mean, whatever. It's okay with bullshit narratives in stories. They can be exciting, whatever. The problem is that I just sat there and realized that this is real. I mean, not that bullshit narrative, but that way with two sides fighting each other, and one is completely noble and the other, everyone there, they are subhuman, they deserve to die. Most importantly, they are not really human. That is how people think about each other to such a large extent. That narrative, it's not just in fiction, it's real. People do think that way, and that made me start crying. I almost had to leave the movie, but no problem, it's okay. I just missed a little bit of that, all that exciting fighting, and then I could keep watching the rest of the movie and I didn't disturb anyone else, so whatever. But still, I hate those narratives, and I hate people think that way about each other in real life, that they refuse to see each other as human, that they have these projections where they see each other as monsters instead of actual people. The other movie is Never Let Me Go, and I'm not going to talk about that one tonight, just see it. It's a wonderful movie if you can stand it and if you have the patience for it. It's a slow psychological drama. It would be so much less painful if someone would just pull out a gun and start doing some action scenes or anything like that, but it never happens in this movie, and that's quite a bit of a spoiler too. But let's just say that there are many courses of actions that the characters can take, but doing activist fundamentalist antics and start waving guns around, that particular route of development will not happen. It would have been such a much easier and lighter movie if it have had some direct violence, but all the violence is so indirect, which makes it so much worse. Do see it, or read the book. Never Let Me Go, same title for the book and the movie. Now, this third movie, I think it's called 8mm or something like that. Heavy spoilers incoming, except that it's not really that kind of story. I think the plot was really obvious like 10 minutes into the movie, so I wouldn't worry about spoilers if I were you and was thinking about seeing it. But I'll add one of those little after I made this movie, I'll just add one of those little things, tell you when the spoilers end, so you can just skip to that part if you want. Anyway, this story is about a cute young couple called David and Tish. They love each other very much and are very happy together. But sadly, she comes from a very rich family. Her father has given David a job, so they are really wealthy and having the good life and all that kind of shit, which actually sort of turns out to be shit. That's my interpretation. The movie is rather open for interpretation, which I think is a very good thing. Anyway, they end up having a threesome with a woman. It's Tish who takes the initiative. She's obviously bisexual, and the three of them are having a really good time. Or at least David and Tish are having a really good time. But afterwards, they feel very guilty, which is really sad because they do love each other. They had an awesome time together. They both enjoyed it. And the third party really seemed to enjoy it too and took a lot of initiative. They don't know anything about her, but that's not the problem. The way I interpret it, it's all about normativity, all this sex negativity in society in general that make them feel guilty for no good reason. We have these norms that you must be only two people, you can't have sex with anyone else, and in these norms, open relationships or threesomes or nice stuff like that is even worse than adultery, because then you can't blame it on, oh, I was drunk, oh, I didn't know what I was doing, oh, she was tempting me, blah 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 blah. You can't do any of those bullshit cover-ups, so you have to stand for what you're doing, which is a good thing, but it makes it harder to keep up a bullshit facade. Anyway, this is maybe 10 minutes into the movie, I didn't clock it, but in a way they are lost already. They are being chained down by this normativity. Shortly after, someone starts blackmailing them. It turns out that the whole thing was a setup. That other woman wasn't just some adventurous young woman. She was a sex worker in a league with organized crime, and it's presented to them as a matter of getting $200,000 from them. Things go rather badly. They get worse and worse and worse through the course of the movie, but the details doesn't really matter. They were lost as soon as David reacted to the blackmail. His reaction was that we must keep this quiet, we must pay whatever they want. And of course they wouldn't ever let him go. They would just keep making it worse, dragging them deeper down into getting involved in horrible stuff. I actually don't need to tell you how it ended. It This kind of story could even have a happy ending. Whatever. Yeah, I don't have to spoil all that much. The basic thing here is that David and Tish are really trapped in two cages here. We have this bullshit upper class, must have a perfect surface kind of world, and we have this underworld that exploits the vulnerability that comes with this need for a perfect image. I mean, one little threesome, it's so innocent, but they are afraid that careers will get hurt if it gets out and blah 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 blah, and this is used against them so fucking badly. Like I said, the movie is open for interpretation. It could be interpreted in a sex negative way, that you should never do anything sexual, blah blah blah, it can come back to haunt you later, blah 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 blah. But seriously, it isn't the threesome that haunts them, it's the whole hypocrisy of society, this whole thing where you have to pretend to not be sexual, all that kind of shit. That is what is hurting them. I mean, the criminals, they are not even the main problem, they are just exploiting the problem. This this story made me feel so very sad for people, because this is not about one couple, fictional or otherwise. It's not about a threesome, it's not about threesomes, it's not about sexuality even. It's about the basic premise, how we treat each others, how we treat our lives. When we work on building a surface, telling a narrative about ourselves, when we let ourselves get lost in the bullshit, we lose our freedom. I've been active in the struggles for human rights since my middle teens. I was 16 when I joined the political party and started fighting for the rights of gay people, the rights of women, and the rights of immigrants. I gradually realized that picking categories is bullshit in itself. We need to fight for everyone. And I don't regret any of the struggles I was fighting for. I'm still fighting those struggles. There are a lot of specific battles that need to be fought for specific categories. But the basic problem is with how we handle society, how we handle ourselves and each other. We need to get rid of all unnecessary social normativity. I was about to say social norms, but I don't mean that. Having unnecessary social norms is okay. We can have all kinds of subcultures and cultures and societies and whatever with any kinds of norms, but we can't make the stakes those fucking highs when we don't need to. It must always be room for stepping back, getting out of the whole bullshit, not getting trapped in it. That's the important part. After that initial things with homosexuality, I started looking into other sexual minorities. I eventually got a bachelor degree in sexology. I have other degrees as well, but this particular one was in sexology. And one argument I encountered over and over is that homosexuals must be open with their sexuality because you shouldn't have to hide who your partner is. You must be able to live together without anyone asking questions. And that is a very valid point. Openness is much more urgent for all, it's much more urgent for homosexuals than for any other sexual minority. But that's just a matter of urgency. It's not a matter of whether or not you need openness. This movie is such a terribly painful example of why everybody needs openness. And please understand that the concept of minority, sexual or otherwise, is not objective. Minority, that is something that is A, not the majority, and B, somehow separated from the majority. I mean, left-handed people, I don't think they are really a minority anymore in the second sense. They used to be a very discriminated minority. This was quite recently. But, I mean, these days, it's no problem to be left-handed. There are still a minority in the statistical sense, of course, but not a minority in this other sense. People who might enjoy threesomes. Well, here in Sweden, I don't think it's a minority in this second sense. I mean, people are free to live a little bit in that regard. American high society, I think this family in the movie was Republicans, and I'm sure that makes it worse. Yeah, I can understand how having a threesome can be such a huge scandal. It's totally pathetic. That subculture kinda needs to get over itself and not hurt its own members by making the stakes so high, entrenching these more or less random norms so deeply that lives get ruined over it. So I mean, the sexual minority other than homosexuality that I've been working most with is what we currently call BDSMF, which stands for BDSM and fetishism, where BDSM is, well, it's two ways of reading it. One is bondage and discipline combined with dominance and submission combined with sadism and masochism. Another way of reading it is bondage, dominance, and sadomasochism. But regardless of how you read those letters, it's code word code word for this smorgasbord of sexuality, which operates under a principle called either safe, sane, and consensual, or risk awareness consensual kink. It's about people enjoying to tie each other up, spanking, whatever. It can be a sort of game, or it can be a more deep power exchange, a way of living. Some people have it as a little spice it up in the bedroom. Some people have it as a lifestyle, deep identity, all that kind of things. And I have encountered this argument so many times that, oh, but these people should remain in the closet because sexuality is everyone's own business. It's not something that people need to talk about. And in a way, that is right. If you are heterosexual, bisexual, homosexual, or not categorized in that particular spectrum, you don't need to talk with people about the details of your sexual life, but you might need to give them an overarching image of the whole thing. And the same is true if you're into BDSM or fetishism or threesomes or whatever. It's not about the sexuality. It is about the fact that people can stigmatize you and people can extort you and people can expose you. Foucault wrote some really interesting stuff about how secrets actually exist to be exposed. That's the main reason why people make something secret. It's not to keep it secret, it is to expose it. And I'm talking on structural level here. I mean, people, those who want to destroy something, first push it underground and then they dig it up to show how dirty it is. Look, this is underground, it's dirty. That's one of the main mechanisms of tabooation. My father called it tabuering in Swedish. I guess that's tabooization perhaps in English. It's a really good word. It's not all that widespread yet, but it's one that I think really should take root, because taboos can be so incredibly destructive. They don't keep us from talking about things, they just keep us from talking about things in a constructive way. They have this whole thing that I just told you about with digging things down, push it down in the dirt so you can then dig it up and expose people and humiliate them. With threesomes, it's only a matter of exposing people and extorting them and that sort of shit. With BDSM, we also have the whole thing with sexual abuse. If, let's say that you are the parent of an adult, you're old enough to be that, and your adult offspring, who is no longer a child but is still your child, this person has bruises. You realize this by mistake. Maybe she or he was changing clothes and you see marks that couldn't have been inflicted by mistake. It can't be an accident. Someone has beaten up your beloved child. How horrible this must feel. Unless you know that they are in a safe, sane, and consensual relationship where they do that kind of stuff because they both like it. And I mean, as an adult child, you don't want your parents to know about your sex life, it's your own business. But if they're going to find out anyway, it's better that they hear it from you in a good way than that they hear it from someone who's trying to make you look bad or extorting you or just raising drama in general, trying to create some tide of destruction or just running around frantically, whatever. Thankfully, culture is getting so much better these days. The need to talk about one's own sex life is disappearing. I mean, if you and your partner, sorry, something has happened to my computer. It went dark there for a moment. I guess I have to move the mouse sometimes. Where was I? Okay. If you and your partner are into BDSM, there's no need for your parents, friends, relatives, or whatever to know about the details. Uh, but maybe you should watch some mainstream movie with them. Maybe you should talk about 50 Shades of Grey. Discuss in why, for example, most people in the BDSM subculture really dislike that book. And you can talk about 50 Shades of Grey in any way you prefer, including that that book is so bad because it looks like a BDSM relationship, but they fail to bring up safe, sane, and consensual in a good way. That Christian guy is really destructive, is not the good dominant. Uh, Real BDSM should be like this and that, and blah blah blah. And yeah, just let the whole thing be natural. And yeah, I think you get my point. The bottom line here is the balance between you deserve to have your cake and eat it too. You should be able to have threesomes, open relationships, whatever, and let people know that no, they don't get to pick on people like you. If they are picking on people like that, then they are picking on you, and that's not okay. But like I said, you should get to have your cake and eat it too. You don't need them to know any details. And one little trick I've learned that I can recommend to some people or to people in some situation is to simply solidarize yourself with all minorities. I mean, pick the whole, well, I'm not going to tell you which one, but here is a list of 10 variations that I find entirely okay, and at least one of them apply to me. And if you talk shit about even one of them, you may or may not be talking shit about me, but in either case, I'm not okay with that. You will be talking about people I care about in either case, and that's not okay. So that's one way of handling it. And we really need to strike back against normative branches of mass media, that whole scandal bullshit line of mass media where they're exposing people for having sex lives or anything like that. With the Clinton affair and the Tiger Woods affair and so on, at least they had a valid excuse that the whole thing was behind the wife's back. I don't think, however, that they had been any lighter if they had found out that she was actually okay with it and in on it. But anyway, here in Sweden we have one of those rags called Aftonbladet. It's a total tabloid that try to make bullshit scandal stuff every now and then. And yeah, a few years ago they tried to start this bullshit campaign against BDSM. It was in 2004. They were, well, in the 50s we had this movement called something with moral rising, something like that, that was trying to expose the homosexual conspiracy. The whole idea was that, oh, there are some people who are homosexuals and yet they have jobs. Some of them have important jobs. This means that homosexuals who are not people like you and me are infiltrating society, and this is very dangerous. Aftonbladet pulled this bullshit stunt on BDSM. They exposed that one guy who once upon a time had the position in one of the trade unions was into BDSM and tried to make it look like a conspiracy. However, they only made fool of themselves. It was too late for that kind of campaign. The tide has really been turning. I mean, Sweden has a lot of feminism, both good feminism and the really horrible kinds of radical feminism with this deep hatred against transsexuals and sadomasochists and yes, technically have a lot of men hating as well, but they don't pose a threat to men in general. They did pose a big threat to trans people and sexual minorities and so on with their deep bigotry. We had this huge conference organized by the government. I think the main organizer was the Minister for Equality, and two of the speakers invited, one was Sheila Jeffries, who have been campaigning that women must fight to destroy gay men, at least the gay men who are into leather, because that's so evil or something like that, and must destroy all sadomasochists and people who have tattoos or Nazis, even if they don't know it, and people who have piercings should be locked up for life. Totally insane. And the other one, she wrote a book called The Transsexual Empire. It's pretty much the Bible of transphobia. Totally vile, revolting book that's been spread in the name of radical feminism and preached indirectly by the Swedish government. Thank you very much, Margareta Winberg. Thankfully, she's not involved in Swedish politics very much anymore. I'm very grateful for that. And like I said before, I don't even have a script today, so I've sort of lost my points somewhere. I don't remember what I was talking about. This is just water, by the way. I'm not getting drunk. I never really do that, by the way. I haven't promised anyone not to drink, but why would I get drunk? I mean, come on. Life is exciting enough sober without having to downclock my brain. Yeah, this is why it's good to have a script. When I hold a speech in real life, I never use an actual script, but I do always keep a bullet point list of things I want to talk about. So when this happens, I just look at my list and then I switch over to talk about this other thing that I was going to talk about. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here, it's not about sexuality, and it's definitely not about any specific sexuality. It's about this basic thing that we need to be honest with ourselves and each other. We must break this systematic narrative building culture of lies and bullshit and allow ourselves and each other to be ourselves. The norms that we really uphold need to be limited, really fucking limited, because those norms, it's things you just shouldn't do. And I mean, the more that gets forbidden, the more that gets stigmatized, the harder it is to stay away from all of it. You can't live a real life. You're trapped in a small, shrinking cage where you can't do anything without your life being ruined. On my way back home, after I'd been sitting down for a little while, I started making in my head a small appendix to that movie. Uh, uh, that whole thing about not making too much spoiler again. What I was about to say in general is that we can change our lives. We can turn things around. We can be honest with ourselves and each other. We can stop the bullshit. It's hard though, harder for most than for some. People make compromises with themselves all the time. This basic thing that people will like me better if I pretend to be someone else. If I don't have to make up stuff that isn't me, perhaps, but if I only show the parts of myself that some people will like, then they will like me better. Except then I will have to keep up the charade. I will always have to be frightened that I will find out. I will surround myself with friends who I think would leave me if they knew the truth about me. And that is really fragile. And that's why I try my best to avoid doing that. And I advise everyone else, to the best of your ability, avoid that kind of bullshit. Make sure that your friends know you for who you are. I don't mean that they need to know every thought going on in your brain, but don't pretend that you don't have weird thoughts. If you do, they don't need to know the details. But I mean, seriously, there are things going on in our brains all the time. We choose what we do, and those characters in the beginning of the movie, they made a choice early on. They chose shame, they chose helplessness, and it took them down on a real destructive path. Whether or not they ever got out of it, I'm not going to spoil, but what I can say is that it kept getting darker for quite a while, and that's how it works in reality as well. Abusers of all kinds will look for vulnerable people, and once you let them get their claws into you, they will just keep digging, keep abusing you, keep using you. So don't try to appease them. Get the fuck out. Change your life so they can't hurt you anymore. Uh, and like I said, this is regardless of whether the whole thing is about sex or something else. It can be about religion, for example. That's a really big common one. When I lived in Indonesia, I met so many fake Muslims and Christians. And with fake, I mean that they didn't have any emotional connection to their religion at all. They hated being Muslim or Christian. They didn't believe in it. They thought it was embarrassing. They didn't want to be it, but they had to pretend because their families would disown them and they might lose their jobs and they might get harassed if they told the truth. This is a big part of what makes that particular society so fragile. And this phenomenon is not special to Indonesia in any way. We have this basic phenomenon everywhere, just to different degrees and on different subjects. And right now, a lot of, well, pretty much all decent societies, to various degrees, are building a new system of normativity. I'm a part of this. We're building norms where it's not okay to be bigoted or prejudiced or such. We need to keep an open mind, at least about certain things. I like these norms. I will keep fighting for them, but we have to watch out because normativity helps keeping society together, but it can be corrosive. It can be so destructive. One analogy that is often used about many things, it is if something will bend or break. If something is very stiff, then it's harder to get it out of the way, but once you get it out of the way, it is broken. And it is that way with hard normativity. If we make our norms so fucking stiff that things break when, if the rules can only be broken, not bent, then we have a huge fucking problem. And this whole struggle to make the world a better place becomes part of the oppression. The basic, most important thing here is that we need to fight against bigotry rather than bigots. We need to fight against prejudice rather than prejudiced people. We need to leave a lot of room for saying, okay, I was wrong, or okay, maybe I should look into that further. We need to condemn each other's bad ideas rather than each other as persons. A little while ago, I saw a video on TED Talks. This video was about digital footprints. And what this video was saying, as I interpreted it, was pretty much stay away from the internet. You want to be seen as a decent person, and everything you ever do will always be held against you. So just shut up. Don't have any opinions. Don't share thoughts and ideas. Don't participate in discussions because it will be held against you. In a way, he is right. In a very destructive, dark, cynical, hopeless way, he is right. If you choose fear, if you choose shame, if you choose helplessness, don't do that. Live. Have a life. When you seek a job, if that potential employer Googles you, well, if he wants to be so narrow-minded, he don't let you have a job because something you said on the internet could be interpreted in a certain way. Fuck that job, get another job. Seriously. But I mean, if you have some political ideas or whatever, and later realize that they are not such a good idea, then just change your mind openly. Okay, I believed this before, I don't believe this anymore. And you could say that to future employers that, oh, by the way, I changed my opinion sometimes. I'm more mature now than I was before. Of course, that depends a little bit on what you're doing on the internet. You should always try to stay away from, of course, bigotry and prejudice and so on in general, but especially harassment campaigns and just puking bile and hatred over the internet. I mean, that's not cool. And there's a balance between, on the one hand, having too much social control and pressure, and on the other hand, if you make a fool of yourself, yes, it should come back to haunt you. It's just a matter of how much does it haunt you. I mean, back to the movie. It's, I mean, getting your sex life published online, that's, I mean, that's a sex crime done against you. But, I mean, no. I don't think there's anything wrong at all with having a threesome. And if someone outs you like that, it's only that person who is at fault. But let's say that you have a threesome and are a bit indiscreet about it, and someone is giggling about it later. I mean, if they condemn you, then fuck them for being anti-sex bigots. But if they're just giggling a bit at your expense, yeah, maybe you deserve that level of embarrassment. Whatever. We we have to be able to take a little bit of bullshit in our lives, okay? I don't know. I'm. Oh shit! I've been talking for almost an hour. Well, I think I'm really done for tonight. Tomorrow I will decide whether or not I will publish this video. I'm quite certain that I will not edit it. If I publish it, you will just have to take it with stutters and breaks and everything. So that's all I have to say for tonight. Rambly as it might be. Next time I will use a script, but maybe I will do unscripted ones like this sometimes. We'll see. Good night and live long and prosper.